Brought to you by the United States Marine Corps.
All right, everyone, welcome into the first ever SCPI Southern Section Boys and Girls Lacrosse Podcast. I'm Sarah Chafee, and this is Jim. Jim, do you want to introduce yourself and tell the people a little bit about what you do and who you are?
Sure. My name is Jim Loftus. I am one of the two partners who run MaxLax, maxlaxoc.com on the web. I handle mostly the LA half, maxlaxla.com. We've been doing this 5 or 6 years now. Started because we felt that the local media was not paying much attention to lacrosse, and so we created a site ourselves. So we try to cover everything. We actually do San Diego as well, so everything from San Diego to Santa Barbara, and now lacrosse is moving inland as well, and we're getting teams out in the Riverside area. So our territory is getting bigger, and we just try to create a venue for the lacrosse community to come and find out what's going on, who's who, and what are the big games, and who should they go watch.
So not only can viewers who are interested in podcasts or high school lacrosse come here for their info, they can go check out your website. What's your website?
maxlaxoc.com. And then within that, there's sections dedicated to Orange County, to LA, to San Diego. We do mostly high school, but we'll cover some youth as well and some college as well. We're trying to do more with the USC women, who are a top 10 team this year in the NCAA. So we're doing the best we can with the resources we have.
Love that. And then also, Jim, just side note, what drew you to lacrosse?
What drew me to lacrosse? I got hooked on lacrosse when I moved to Connecticut and started working at ESPN, and my two older boys started playing. And after about 8 years there, and I was coming back to LA for a job, my son was finishing 6th grade, heading to middle school, and the first question he asked when I told him we were moving was, "Will I still get to play lacrosse?" It wasn't about his friends or what school he'd go to. It was, will I still get to play? So it just sort of it was ingrained in the family at that point. So we moved out here and found a place for him to play, and then his younger brother played. So I've just sort of been hooked on it. And when we moved, there was no resource really to figure out which teams are which and which players are which. And so after a few years, I had an opportunity to create that, and so we did. And that's MaxLax.
It's going to be a fun season. I can already tell. All right, so let's kind of this podcast might be a little bit different just because it is preseason still, and, not many games have been played, but we'll start off with like a rough preseason top 10. So let's start with boys. We have a list here, and we'll start with number 10. We have San Clemente, Chaminade, and then 8 we have Santa Margarita. 7, you'll see we have Oaks Christian. 6, St. Margaret's Episcopal. 5, Harvard Westlake. 4, Palos Verdes. And 3, CDM Corona Del Mar. And then let's talk about the top 2, Jim, because at 2 we have Loyola, and then at 1 we have Foothill. So explain kind of the reasoning why these 2 teams are 2 to keep your eye on this season.
The only reason that we have Foothill 1 and Loyola 2 is because Foothill beat Loyola in overtime in their season opener 2 Saturdays ago. Last May, though, Loyola beat Foothill pretty handily to win the section championship, the LA champ Loyola over the OC champ Foothill. So if you'd asked me this 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, Loyola would have been number 1, and they were actually leading in that season opener. Foothill made a comeback and ended up beating them in overtime. So those are 2 very evenly matched teams, and it would not be shocking to see them meet up again down the road. But that's why it's Foothill Loyola instead of Loyola Foothill.
So that'll be a game to keep your eye on if that lines up.
Yeah, they're not on the regular season schedule anymore because they met in the opener. So the next opportunity would be if they reach the championship game once again. But both of them have some teams they'll have to go through to make it there.
That's the beauty of the top 10. It's always kind of fun to see how it moves around each week. So we'll keep you guys posted. We'll always be posting a top 10 as well. And then I want to touch on, we have a girls top 10 as well.
Mm-hmm.
So let's run through that. We have 10, Chaminade. 9, Corona Del Mar. 8, we have Santa Margarita. 7, we have Newport Harbor. 6, San Clemente. 5, we have Trabuco Hills. 4, Redondo Union. 3, we have St. Margaret's. 2, we have Foothill. And 1, we have Mater Dei. And before we talk about, I just kind of want to briefly touch on the top 2 as well. But Jim, I noticed that this our list is OC heavy. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, with the growth of girls lacrosse in Southern California, I think it really exploded in Orange County before it began to emerge in LA. And so there's only a couple of programs in my mind in LA that are of consistent depth and talent that can compete with some of these Orange County schools. Redondo Union and Chaminade are the 2 LA schools on that list. They met for the LA Championship last May, and Redondo won. And Redondo's won that title a couple of times now. And I don't have the number off the top of my head, but they're probably be considered the premier team or program rather in LA. I think a lot of it has to do with youth development, and they have a program in the South Bay there that brings girls in. Now, don't get me wrong, there's other really good programs. Palos Verdes girls are great, Agora girls are great, Oak Park was fantastic and had an off year and is coming back. Westlake out here in the Conejo Valley is going to be very good, but they're a very young team. So the game up in this area in LA is still emerging for the girls. There's not the depth of programs. So that's why we have, I think, 8 Orange County and 2 LA teams listed in that top 10. And again, that top 10 is not any sort of official poll or ranking, right? That's how we sort of assessed the teams coming into the season in order just to determine who we needed to do preseason stories on, preseason previews. Because we can't do everyone, so we sort of figure out who are the 10 best, and let's try to do that.
So let's quickly glance at Foothill. They're 2016 section champs, and then Mater Dei defending section champs. How do you see this? How do you see this potentially changing, or is this a ranking? Those top 2 teams. Tell me a little bit about those.
I have to be honest. I cover mostly the LA area, and I'm not too familiar with the Orange County, and especially when it comes to the girls. I'm looking at their schedule now. It's they actually won't meet head-to-head until middle of April at Foothill. Mater Dei at Foothill.
That'll be one to catch, though.
Right, and I think they're traditionally the stronger among the stronger programs. More depth. I mean, Mater Dei sent a couple of girls off to Division I last year, but also in that championship game against Redondo had a number of underclassmen scoring goals for them and playing key roles. So I think it comes down to depth of talent. You know, there are schools that will get 1 or 2 really good players, and sometimes that's enough to carry them. But then they run into a team that is able to put 9 or 10 really good players on the field, and that happened to Oak Park against Foothill in the section championship game a couple years ago, and it happened to Redondo Union last year. They just could not keep up.
Well, it'll be interesting, as we had mentioned, to see once we start getting in the swing of things, to see how these end up changing. But also, kind of just looking forward, Jim, let's talk big matchups this week. What's going on, and what do people need to know about? What if people watching this need to go check out a couple big matchups, where would you send them?
Well, since I focus mostly on the LA half of the section, the 2 games that I'm targeting, and I can only go to one of them, unfortunately, are both Saturday. St. Margaret's Episcopal comes up and plays at Harvard Westlake, and I had that one on my calendar for quite a while. But later on that evening, Palos Verdes travels to Loyola, and so that ends up being a 1 versus 2 matchup in our LA coaches poll, and those 2 have it's interesting dynamic. They're the last 2 seasons, 2016 and 2017, Palos Verdes beat Loyola in the regular season and earned the number 1 ranking. But by the time we got deep in the playoffs, Loyola turned the tables and beat Palos Verdes for the LA championship, and then went on to win the section championship. So Loyola's had the upper hand in this rivalry, but they play every year in a non-league game in the middle of the season. This one's actually early in the season, so we'll see how that plays out Saturday night. So those are the two big ones that I'm watching. Also in Orange County, Tesoro and Santa Margarita. They're sort of 4 and 6 roughly in in Orange County. That is also a Saturday game. Up here we have another good one, number 5 and number 4, Chaminade at Oaks Christian on Friday night. I'm going to try to make it to that one as well. And then in OC, actually tonight, so this podcast will post after this game. But if anyone gets a chance to see Santa Margarita and Corona del Mar, I'm sorry, that's next Tuesday.
Oh, so we have something
There's
to look forward to.
There's still time. Mark your calendars. Corona del Mar and Santa Margarita next Tuesday, the 13th. And that Tuesday is Palos Verdes at Harbor Westlake. So 2 versus 3 up here in LA.
So things are heating up.
There's some really good matchups early in the season. I mean, Foothill and Loyola to open the season was and nobody's scheduling cupcakes.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And Jim, let's just talk about some storylines for this season. What is the casual fan who maybe has drawn an interest to lacrosse? What are some storylines this season that maybe the casual fan maybe they need to know?
Well, I think one of them is simply the depth. You go back 10 years or so. I started following lacrosse in LA in 2010, and so around then, a little bit before, it was pretty predictable who would make it deep into the playoffs and who would face off for the section championship. On the boys' side, especially, there's incredible depth of programs now, and you talk about an LA top 10 that really. Once you get to 8 or 9, you end up looking down to about 15, and any of those 6 or 7 teams has an opportunity to be in the top 10. Orange County, I think, is probably even a little bit deeper. So someone who's ranked, 12th or 13th in the OC does have an opportunity to make a playoff run. So you can find good games everywhere and talent everywhere. The other storyline is growth. Up here in LA, we have a couple of newer programs. St. John Bosco is one. They're 3-0 now. They haven't played the toughest schedule yet, and looking ahead, they play a couple of games against ranked teams, but they're only in their second year, and they have an opportunity to post a strong enough record to get invited to the playoffs in year 2, so there's a lot of growth and expansion in lacrosse, and team Chaminade is number 4 or 5 now in the LA area. A couple years ago, 2012, I think they went winless. And 2013, they won 2 games. And their coach, Steve Lane, has built a program there. He told me in the preseason, instead of having a couple of lacrosse players with a bunch of athletes just learning the game, I now have a whole bunch of lacrosse players. So.
And how cool is it for you, someone who's been covering lacrosse for a while now, to see the growth like this?
Oh, it's fantastic! It's fantastic because when you do fall in love with this sport, you can stop and watch it anywhere, and you find yourself turn on TV or finding a web stream somewhere and watching 2 college teams that you have no connection to, but just to watch lacrosse. Well, now you can do that here. There's high school games every night of the week that are worth going out to see. You still get some really lopsided games and emerging programs that don't have that depth of talent that they can really compete and contend. But we have another young program up here, Village Christian, that is only in its 3rd year, I think, of playing lacrosse. And they've got a kid who he scored 17 goals in 3 games.
Oh my gosh.
And again, you look at the competition and fine, maybe they're not playing the toughest of teams, but there's talent everywhere, and so if you love lacrosse, there's always something to go see.
And that's the beauty. So we'll be giving you guys the lowdown. We'll be telling you the big matchups, the games to go and see. And then as the podcast progresses, as the season progresses, we'll be, giving out some game balls to outstanding performances. It'll be interesting, Jim, to see how the top 10s shift around. And I'm looking forward to it. I don't know about you, but we're going to represent the West Coast. Lacrosse is here out in the West Coast. So we're excited. And Jim, you're just a wealth of knowledge, so can't wait to hear more from you this season. And one last time, if people want to read up on more lacrosse in their area, where can they go?
Well, the primary URL is maxlaxoc.com, maxlaxoc.com. You can find us on Twitter, maxlaxla, maxlax Inc. I think is the OC's account. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. We try to distribute our content and our conversation everywhere. We've got a couple of young guys in the OC that are helping us with coverage, and getting out to as many games as we can. So we looked at the schedule the other night, and I think we figured out we're going to be in attendance at a dozen lacrosse games
awesome.
This week.
Okay.
And we sort of asked, what other publication in Southern California is going to be at 12 lacrosse games this season?
Right.
And I don't think there's one. So if you love lacrosse, we would appreciate you checking us out. maxlaxoc.com. Find us on pretty much any social media platform you use.
And as you can tell from the podcast, you guys are just a wealth of knowledge. So, Jim, I look forward to the rest of our podcast. Like we mentioned, this is going to be a weekly thing. So we'll keep everything lacrosse coming your way, girls and boys. And Jim, we'll talk next week. I have a feeling we're going to have a lot to talk about.
We will. There's some good matchups, so there's going to be some changes to the rankings and to the rest of the season. So, yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much for watching, and get out there. Go catch some games.